Hello everyone, thank you for joining me in this filmed conference over how to recognize the signs of anxiety, depression, psychosis related to COVID-19 and how to resolve them. I committed during this COVID disruption to intervene for free in order to help companies as well as individuals learn to recognize and deal with this COVID-related angst. Of course, it is still the case. I continue and I will continue to intervene at no cost to explain what will follow. I am Diana Massiera. I am a coach in personal development for the corporate world. I am a published author on the subject, running and co-running companies in domains unrelated with the subject, certified consultant in cybersecurity, and last but not least, with an intelligence quotient that cannot be tested. The reason why I mention my IQ that goes beyond the maximal scoring points that one can have while taking regular IQ tests is to brag a little, but above all because experience taught me that it is the only way for certain men to put themselves in the situation where they are ready to listen to a woman. So fortunately, they are a minority, but this way I also have their attention. Thank you for choosing to take some of your time to listen to the following. The COVID-19 and its direct and indirect consequences, health-related, economical, social, etc. All these has a psychological impact on each and every one of us. Yes, every one of us. We have all been impacted by this situation, but most of us don't recognize it. We say, no, but it's okay. Me, I was fine, but my neighbor, damn, etc. We were all impacted because any change in our environment has an effect on us. It is normal. It is basic to human being condition. If during the night your house was painted in blue and you wake up in the morning with blue walls all around, you cannot pretend that it does not do anything to you, but damn, your wife, your husband talked about it all day long and couldn't get over the fact that the walls were painted in blue during your sleep by a stranger. Any external change has an internal impact. It is important to recognize it. This impact can be more or less strong depending on people. If you hate the color blue, the new paint of your walls will seem even more unbearable than if it is your favorite color. As long as we don't recognize that an external change had an internal impact on us, we are in denial. And if we are in denial, we don't see things how they really are, and we cannot help many people. For everything that will follow, the principle will stay the same. We must do it, recognize it for ourselves before we can help others. Let's take a few seconds to address this theme of denial in order to explain its reasons. This denial is related to the expectation we hold on ourselves for not cracking, holding on, staying strong, etc., which are very positive behavioral objectives, right? The problem lies when we do not know how to attain these objectives. There we find ourselves in a state where, unconsciously of course, we make others believe, and we make ourselves believe, that we attained the objectives. And why do we make ourselves believe that we attained the objectives? Well, because failure is seen under a negative manner rather than a positive one. So we refuse to admit that we fail. But it is just like seeing the glass half full or half empty. Failure can be seen positively when we associate it to the fact that we learn from our mistakes. So, in order to learn, we must make mistakes. Mistakes are a blessing for those who see in it a continuous learning. Okay, so to slowly go back to our initial subject. Number one, let's keep the objectives of not cracking, holding on, staying strong in mind because, once again, they are very positive. Number two, let's accept to see, to pause, to take a break, to meditate on the ways we were impacted by this COVID situation. Let's accept to see it all in consciousness, everything that it creates within us and that we suppress very deeply. Once we listed for ourselves the different ways by which we were impacted, we still have not attained the objectives of not cracking, holding on, staying strong. We may even feel further away from them. But no worries, it is not the case. At this moment, what we have to do is to put in front of each impact of our list one or many positive elements that are associated with it, what it taught us about ourselves and about others. I will give examples later, but just to finish this sequence. Number 4, we let the magic of empathy do its job. What this means is that when you have done this work of comprehension and understanding for yourself, you will be able to recognize when others are impacted by the same elements that you, and you will know how to help them get out of denial or anxiety through the steps that I will also detail later. So let's go back for now to steps 2 and 3. These are examples of impacts shared by many of us, as well as examples of positive elements to associate them with. The fear, the insecurity related to work, losing our job from X billions of different manners. Our brain can go very far when it comes to imagining the worst scenarios sometimes, right? The positive elements to associate are: I list all the things I know how to do and I can do in order to reassure myself on the multitude of jobs I could apply for if my fear realizes itself. And I stop the list only when I am reassured on this point. I can also ask my closed ones what types of job they think I could do, or go and look on the internet all the jobs that come up when I type in each one of my skills, etc., etc. Fear of not be able to handle everything, remote working, kids, school for the kids, etc. The positive elements to associate can be that I am lucky to have the opportunity to learn and know my kids better. I am lucky to have kids. I am lucky to have a job. I am lucky I don't have to wake up early to go to work. I can sleep longer, etc. Right here, just like the fear that we saw before, as well as the ones that will follow. But statistics have it that it is more underlined with this example. Careful, please, to ensure that you are really sincerely reassured and not putting on the old behavioral automatism to pretend that you attained the objective. In order to know that you are truly reassured, you simply look at the mindset that you apply. You are happy to do remote working and have your kids. It is very simple, but so very true. You are deeply, sincerely happy. As long as you don't attain this state of serenity, it means that you have to keep adding positive elements in front of this impact. A third example of impact is the fear of being infected by the virus. The positive elements to put in front of this impact can be to transpose the situation to road safety measures. We apply the safety instructions. We put our seat belt on in the car. We put our mask on when requested. We keep a safety distance with the car in front of us. We keep a safety distance with people, etc., etc. And we remember that this COVID episode is temporary, whereas road safety is permanent. And that the number of deaths despite road safety remains higher. And that we are not scared when we see a car or get inside a car. The last example that I will give is the fear that the COVID episode lasts too long. Before looking for the positive elements to put in front, we have to dig a little and understand the reasons of this fear, because generally it is related to one or more of the fears that we mentioned earlier, and consequently to its list of positive elements. Anxiety, depression, and psychosis are visible when these fears are expressed. And so, when the person is not in denial of the impact it has on him or her. For these people, you can support them by allowing them to list for themselves the positive elements to put in front of each impact by asking them how they feel. It is easy with this category of people because when these fears, these impacts are verbally expressed, because they are not in denial of the impacts that the event had on them. When you will ask how they feel as they go along with the exercise of finding positive elements, they will tell you the truth because, once again, they are not in denial. They will tell you, yeah, a little better. You will know that you will have to push them to continue the list. They will say, oh, I feel better, but here also, where there is a but, it either means that the list must be continued or that another fear must be addressed, etc., etc. Until the reply to the question, how do you feel, is very well, thank you, or much better, thank you. Gratitude is a good signal that the person indeed feels liberated. So, as you guessed, the hard part is when the anxieties are not expressed, when the person is in denial. Because in this case, we contain ourselves and contain ourselves and contain ourselves, and we will crack all of a sudden over the smallest matter, surprising our close ones. So, for this category, how can we recognize that fear, anxiety, depression, psychosis are present even when they are not verbalized? One of the first elements that can give you a hint are a person's behavioral changes. If someone who usually is a calm person becomes very irritated and upset, or the opposite, someone very talkative who suddenly remains very calm, this shows you that something is wrong. This kind of behavioral change often happens when the person is in denial and does not dare to recognize that an external event had internal impacts. Most of the time, because of the negative connotation they put on the failure of not attaining the I am doing well objective. The human brain, which recognizes that the internal pressure is too strong, which recognizes that for these people's well being, they have to succeed in verbalizing what bothers them and getting rid of it, will unconsciously for these people accentuate, stress out, some feelings that usually don't affect them, or will push an unusual passivity. Imagine a little operating agent in our brain who will suddenly turn on all the switches that are usually turned off for the usually calm person, or turn off everything, including the lights, to sit quietly in the dark for the usually talkative person. So let's pay attention to punctual behavioral changes, of course, but furthermore, if the change lasts, and allow for an open and calm discussion with this person to have her verbalize the reason of his or her behavioral change. At this moment, two types of reactions are possible. Either the person will explain with a logical manner, a manner that will speak to you, that resonates within you. You will feel that, yes, effectively, this explains the behavioral change. In this case, you can feel relieved. These people simply had a breakthrough over themselves or their environment and decided consciously to change their behavior to align with their new version of themselves. And yes, even with a very calm person who doesn't let anything through anymore, if he or she verbalizes consciously, having realized that they gave too much or taken too much on the shoulders and does not intend to let this situation continue, it is extremely sane. And don't worry, they are experiencing in a certain way the opposite side of their past behavior, which will last sometimes, short or long, and will slowly find a kind of balance, of equilibrium between these two extremes. So, really, this first type of reaction, being able to verbalize the behavioral change in a logical manner, is very good. But the second type of reaction, if the person does not succeed to logically explain their behavioral change, here it is a strong signal that this person feels overwhelmed by the management of his or her internal denial's consequences. So we must then accompany this person very slowly towards the verbalization of his or her fears, and then help her find the positive elements to put in front of each fear to get rid of the impact. And as we go along and verify frequently by asking the question, how do you feel? And depending on the answers, as we saw earlier, you will know when to continue or when the person is truly freed from his or her anxiety. The second element that can give you a hint is the absence of reply. Moreover, in this time of remote working, the absence of reply can mean that these people are closing on themselves and begin to feel overwhelmed. And this is shown by a difficulty to handle daily activities, and thus to be in the incapacity of replying to calls or emails during long periods of time. Here also, the absence of reply can have a logical explanation, and here also you will simply have to wonder for the reasons of this absence of reply while maintaining an open and favorable atmosphere, which means that if, as a manager, you call this person while worrying about the completion of Mr. John Doe's file, you will unconsciously be guided towards saying or making them feel that your interest is not their well-being, but rather completing work on time, which will then make it almost impossible to have a sincere discussion to get the person to verbalize, then do all the steps that you saw earlier. Which means that you, as a manager, an employer, a coach, a colleague, you must be very conscious of your expectations before you communicate with this person. Communicate, there is the word common in it. So build a discussion over a common basis in order for both parties to go in the same direction. All this is consequently related with creating the right attitude and how to free ourselves from expectations, but it is not the matter of this conference. So, as a manager, an employer, a colleague, we pay attention to free ourselves from any expectations other than how the person is doing before we try to contact him or her. Because actually, the John Doe file will never be done correctly if the person is not well. So we review our priorities. Putting a work-related pressure when there is a doubt over this individual being in despair is a lack of experience in management efficiency. It will not make work progress qualitatively. It will add up risks if the person's health is weak. And it will break the trust this person holds towards you. Okay, let's go back to where we were. So, as a manager, an employer, a colleague, we pay attention to free ourselves from all expectations other than how the person is doing, and we stay on the lookout for a logical explanation. If there is no logical explanation, we must follow the steps we explained earlier. Help them verbalize the fears, put positive elements in front, and wonder how the person is feeling until we get a sincere confirmation that this person's state has improved. When we reach this state, or back when with the first case, when we get a logical explanation, this is where we can say, okay, what's going on with the John Doe file? Come on. A third element that can give you a hint is a lack of focus combined with the fact of worrying about unrelated subjects. An individual who has trouble focusing and gives off-track answers by transferring the discussion on the fact that this or that, which has nothing to do with the subject, worries them for XYZ reason, also shows an aspect of denial. Whether the discussion mentions or not the object of the denial, the internal impacts are so strong that the person will unconsciously project her fears on something else because he or she is not ready to face the impacts. And just like in many cases, our brain protects us when we are not ready. It makes us screen completely the particular thing. We have all said, "Oh yeah, of course, why didn't I see that earlier? Why didn't I understand that earlier?" The reason to this is that we were not ready to see or hear this thing. As simple as that. Because it was sending us back to a conditioning on which we were not liberated, because it was sending us back to a false belief, to a limiting thought towards ourselves or others. When we say, "Oh, this is true, why didn't I stop all this situation earlier? It has been lasting for so long." Well, the real reason, for example, is that we were holding on to the feeling that we owed something to the person who was taking advantage of our kindness, or the feeling that we had to content ourselves with this situation because we were not worth more, etc., etc. And someday, for a reason or another, we get the cue. We see clearly and we say, "Stop, this cannot last anymore." But yeah, again, this is not the subject of this conference. So, once more, in front of people who have trouble focusing and who project their worries to something else unrelated, we understand that these people are in denial on something, which may not necessarily be the thing on which they projected their worries. Careful, let's not jump to conclusions. Although it is a good place to start digging using the element that was verbalized and help these individuals to put positive elements in front while asking frequently how they feel. A fourth element that can give you a hint is very fast swings within seconds of a person's state to its opposite. Someone who will rapidly go from a smile to anger shows that the smile was overrated, was a fake one in order to show that the "I am doing well" objective was attained. And so this person is in denial. So you know what to do now. Help them verbalize the fears, help them put positive elements in front, and check their state of mind by asking open questions over their well-being. Finally, the fifth element that can give you a hint is that the person avoids eye contact with others. This shows that this person is still in denial. but cannot succeed to have others and themselves believe that they attained the I am well objective. So, once more, we help them verbalize the underlying fears, then put positive elements in front of these fears and check their well being until being sure that all is well. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for the people that you will help or try to help. I know that for some people it may be harder to admit things than others, but never underestimate the action of planting a seed. Thank you again.